Hi everybody, this is Adam Key, and I'm coming to you, well, kind of live from Houston. The palm trees behind you are in my parents' backyard. It might give the impression I'm in a much more tropic place than I am. Everybody else has been talking about coming late to the party in these discussions, and I think I'm the one really making an entrance, because here we are, about 2 weeks left, and this is the first time you've seen a video response from me. That said, you know, it's been a heck of a semester, summer semester thus far. I'm teaching 4 classes, taking 3, this one, forensics pedagogy and gender and communication. And I just got approval last week to start researching my thesis, so you can say I'm kind of a busy guy. Alright, that being said, let's talk about this overall debate. Popper and Eccles, you know, they present some good points, and you guys have really gotten into, I think there were 100 and some discussion posts so far and a lot of videos. You guys have really gotten some very good insights so far in the debate, but I'm not really a Sophia guy. I'm more of a phronesis guy. I look to the idea that, you know, wisdom or knowledge should be something that's, I guess, practical. And in that sense, I wanted to broach something that's been brought up a little bit, but wanted to get further in depth. And I guess that's really, why do we need to have this debate and discussion in communication studies in the first place? You see, it seems to me that we are just a little too excited, I guess, or excitable at the idea that there have to be these two schools of thought, this idea of communications science or communications art. And what I mean by that is, you know, when we recognize these things, when we act as if they're real, what we're really doing is reifying these divisions, whether or not they're real. So this becomes relevant for us as communication people, because we need to really understand the process by which we are communicating about our own discipline. Now, I came from a master's program. I'm very much what you would call a qualitative guy. I came from a master's program at Sam Houston State University in Huntsville, Texas, which is not. And on more than one occasion, by pretty much every professor in the graduate program, I was told that what I was doing, you know, as a qualitative researcher was not really research, and that qualitative research was really an excuse for people who were just too lazy to do science. Now, as a qualitative guy, I find this offensive, and I would hope more people would, because what we really see here is this fundamental divide that occurs in the discipline of communication studies between, say, the Popper School and the Eccles School. Not really, because they're not communication philosophers per se, but we see this between the people who say it's science and the people who say it's art. Let me offer something a little unique here. I don't care. You see, communication for some people in some aspects is certainly science, and for other people in other aspects and venues it's certainly art. However, this is not the type of thing I can really bring myself to care about, and the reason for that is because communication is a meta-discipline. We bring in, you know, things from psychology and sociology, but also from some of the, and I know people have, you know, bemoaned this term, the hard sciences, you know, your biologies and, you know, chemistries, where we get the idea of, you know, positivism or post-positivism and the scientific method. I think that's a plane. Anyway, here's why I don't care about the fundamental distinction or, you know, debate people have on whether it's a science or an art. There is plenty of communication research and communication study that is science, that is, at least in some sense, falsifiable or verifiable. Now, Mark brought up a pretty good point about the fact that, yeah, people could be lying, and I guess that's true, but if we're going to go under that assumption, then we could really say that, you know, I don't know, how can we really trust any scientific research, because the people in the report could be lying. But if we assume that people are in general at least telling the truth for the most part, then you can see there are certain parts, the ones that use survey research and, you know, massive amounts of random sample surveys to determine, I guess, certain ways people communicate. That would fall under the definition of science. Then you have people like me. I'm a forensics guy. I study persuasion. You know, I'm a debate coach, and, you know, also coach, you know, some public speaking and individual events. And I'm a member of an organization that's a forensic honorary, the oldest one in the country, called Pi Kappa Delta. And Pi Kappa Delta's motto translates into the art of persuasion, beautiful and just. Say that again, the art of persuasion, beautiful and just, because I don't believe persuasion is really a science. It's not like, okay, I want to persuade a person of X, so if I just do Y and Z, then that'll work. That's how science works. There are laws to it. Now, that's not to say you can't have scientific feedback or scientific information used to inform persuasion. For instance, I've done studies on the use of microexpressions in audience adaptation. Microexpressions are certainly scientific. It's actually biology. Now, that being said, though, the use of communication in a means of persuasion is certainly an art, and it's something that it can be really beautiful when done well. But it's also something that is very dependent on a person's creativity, not following some hard and fast rules. With that in mind, what I'd really like to talk about here is the idea that as a discipline, I don't really think we need to have this debate. I think what we need to do is be, in general, more respectful to both people, or both sides of the issue. The quantitative people, and this maybe it's because I'm a qualitative guy or a person who views something as more of an art than a science. I get a lot of flack from quantitative people, and I haven't really seen a whole lot of qualitative or communications art people give a bunch of stuff to communications science. So much as I see, and we had talked about this in discussions before, the idea of science is legitimacy. It's essentially something to the effect that they believe that because they're doing science, what they do is legitimate and we're not. And that's not a productive philosophy. I'll give you a prime example. I'm a smoker. Now, saying that, I'm sure a lot of you guys had a pretty interesting reaction to it. But the thing was about smokers there are smokers, there are non-smokers, just like there are people who view communication art, people who view communication as science. I have no problem with non-smokers. I'm not going to go smoke when people don't like it, around them when they don't like it. I'm not going to go blow smoke in people's faces because I'm not trying to be a jerk about it. But for some reason, a lot of non-smokers feel the need to, tell me what I'm doing is wrong and I should change it. As if I don't know the health risks and don't know what I'm getting myself into if I'm just somehow ignorant of it. Not to mention it's all over every cigarette pack you've ever seen. But it's like they have this self-righteous quest in order to try to change me when what I'm doing doesn't really affect them. And that's the same thing I believe that largely the communication as science people do to the communication as art people. It's not enough for them to say, well, we do this method and you do this method of research, and both are okay, both do different things. It's as if they need to feel like they are somehow justified or somehow better because they do one or the other. And again, that's not a productive idea. So when I'm addressing this debate as a whole, is communication or art and science? Well, it's both, but I think the more important thing to realize here, the real critical thing to realize, is that if we're going to continue on as a discipline, we can't have this divide. That this debate should be something that's purely academic and not as personal as it often gets. Because if that happens, then we're not going to be really a discipline at all. We'll probably split off into communication science and communication art, as opposed to a unified thing like communication studies. So all told, when we look at this overall problem, I think we would be best in simply not caring whether it's an art or a science, at least outside of a purely hypothetical or academic standpoint. But from a practical standpoint, we should acknowledge that there are elements of both, and it does not make one person better or worse. In the same way that we shouldn't be blowing smoke at other people, or people shouldn't be telling me what I should be doing with my life, I don't really think researchers of one school should be telling researchers of another school, and I'm not just talking universities, I'm talking schools of thought, what to do. So, in total, what I'm really advocating here is that the world could be a much better place, and the discipline could be a much better place, if all we do is realize that this debate doesn't advance us forward, that we can acknowledge that both systems, communication as science, communication as art, both have value, and focus more on doing what we do best, as opposed to trying to insult or degrade what other people do. Well, this has been my first one, guys. I'm definitely going to be responding to some of you guys, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say in other discussions. Thanks.